His name was Thomas Midgley Jr. He was an engineer, a chemist, a problem solver. He won the Priestley Medal, the highest honor in American chemistry. He held over 100 patents, and he was, according to environmental historian J.R. McNeill, the single organism in Earth's history that had the most negative impact on the atmosphere. One man, two inventions, 1 century, 100 million lives. How does that happen? It starts in 1916. America is in love with the automobile. Henry Ford has just made cars affordable. The roads are filling up. The future feels like speed and steel and gasoline. But there is a problem, a serious one. Car engines knock.
Not a metaphor, a literal sound. A rattling, banging, destructive noise caused by fuel igniting too early inside the cylinder. Knocking destroys engines. It costs money. It limits power. General Motors needs a solution. They hire a young engineer named Thomas Midgley Jr. Midgley tries hundreds of compounds. He is meticulous. He is brilliant. He is relentless. In 1921, after 5 years of searching, he finds it. Tetraethyl lead. A small amount added to gasoline eliminates the knock completely. Engines run smoother. Cars run faster. General Motors calls it a gift to the automobile industry. Midgley calls it his greatest achievement. Here is what he does not say. He knows lead is poisonous. He knows this before the product launches. The research on lead toxicity dates back to ancient Rome. Roman physicians recorded the symptoms: tremors, madness, paralysis, death. Midgley knows. General Motors knows. They launch it anyway.
What happens next is not an accident. It is a slow disaster with a very fast cause. Within 3 years of leaded gasoline hitting the market, workers of the Standard Oil Refinery in Bayway, New Jersey begin dying. They call the building where the lead is processed the House of Butterflies, not because it is beautiful, because the workers inside begin hallucinating. They see things that are not there. They shake, they scream, they collapse. 5 workers die in a single week in October 1924. Midgley himself is examined by reporters. He pours tetraethyl lead over his hands. He holds it to his face. He breathes it in for 60 seconds. He announces that he could do this every day with no problems whatsoever. 1 month later, Thomas Midgley Jr. checks into a sanitarium. His body is shutting down from lead poisoning. But the product does not stop. General Motors hires scientists to study the safety of leaded gasoline. The scientists find no immediate danger. The studies are short, the exposures are low, the long-term data does not exist yet. The government accepts the findings. Leaded gasoline is declared safe. For the next 50 years, every car on the planet burns leaded fuel. Every exhaust pipe releases lead particles into the air, into lungs, into soil, into water, into children. Researcher Herbert Needleman, in a landmark 1979 study published in the New England Journal of Medicine, proves that lead exposure in children causes measurable drops in IQ, increases in aggression, and long-term neurological damage. The lead does not leave the body easily. It accumulates in bone. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. It disrupts the developing nervous system at concentrations previously thought to be harmless. By 1970, atmospheric lead levels in the northern hemisphere are 625 times higher than pre-industrial levels. Scientists later estimate that leaded gasoline exposure reduced the average IQ of every person alive between 1940 and 1990 by as many as 5 points. Think about that number, 5 IQ points, across an entire global population for half a century. Researcher Rick Nevin published a study in 2000 connecting childhood lead exposure in the 1950s and 1960s to a measurable spike in violent crime across the United States, Britain, Canada, and Australia in the 1970s and 1980s. The crime wave that defined a generation, the abandoned neighborhoods, the overcrowded prisons, the moral panics. Lead. How many decisions were altered by a poisoned brain? How many lives took a different shape because a developing mind was quietly erased? The answer cannot be counted. But Thomas Midgley Jr. was not finished. In 1928, 7 years after leaded gasoline, General Motors comes to him with a second problem. Refrigerators are killing people. The refrigerants in use, ammonia, methyl chloride, sulfur dioxide, are toxic. They leak. People die in their homes from invisible gas. Midgley is asked to find something safer. He spends 2 years searching searching. In 1930, he synthesizes a new compound, dichloro-difluoromethane. The world will come to know it simply as Freon, a chlorofluorocarbon, a CFC. It is not flammable, it is not toxic, it does not smell, it does not corrode metal. At a demonstration before the American Chemical Society, Midgley inhales a lungful of Freon and uses it to blow out a candle. The room applauds. It is, by every measure available in 1930, a miracle compound. Within 2 decades, CFCs are everywhere. Refrigerators, air conditioners, aerosol spray cans, fire extinguishers, insulating foam. The modern world is built on them. Then in 1974, 44 years after Midgley's demonstration, 2 chemists at the University of California change everything. Frank Sherwood Rowland and Mario Molina publish a paper in the journal Nature. Their finding is this: chlorofluorocarbons do not break down in the lower atmosphere. They rise, they reach the stratosphere, and up there, ultraviolet radiation splits them apart. The chlorine atoms that are released begin destroying ozone molecules. One chlorine atom can destroy 100,000 ozone molecules before it becomes inert. The ozone layer, the invisible shield that blocks the sun's ultraviolet radiation from sterilizing the surface of the Earth, is being eaten alive. By 1985, a hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica has grown to the size of the continental United States. Scientists estimate that if CFC production had continued unchecked, the ozone layer would have collapsed entirely by the 2060s. What would that mean? Mass extinction of phytoplankton, which produces half the oxygen on Earth, collapse of ocean food chains, UV radiation levels lethal to most surface life. One man's 2 inventions. One added lead to the air for 50 years. One nearly removed the shield between life and the sun.
Rowland and Molina win the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1995. The Montreal Protocol, signed in 1987, begins phasing out CFCs globally. It is considered the most successful environmental treaty in history. The ozone layer is slowly recovering. Scientists project it will return to pre-industrial levels by approximately 2066. 60 years of healing for 30 years of product. Thomas Midgley Jr. never lived to see any of it. In 1940, polio paralyzed his legs. He was 51 years old. He did what he always did. He engineered a solution. He invented an elaborate system of motorized ropes and pulleys to lift himself out of bed each morning. In 1944, he became entangled in his own device. He was strangled by the machine he built to save himself. There is no good way to end that sentence.
Here is what stays with you. Thomas Midgley Jr. was not a villain. He was not reckless. He was not indifferent to human life. He was a brilliant man solving real problems with the tools and knowledge available to him. And that is the most unsettling part. The worst things humans have ever done to the planet were not done by monsters. They were done by engineers trying to help. The next time someone tells you that technology will solve the problem that technology created, remember Thomas Midgley Jr. Remember the House of Butterflies. Remember the hole in the sky. And ask yourself, what are we building right now that our grandchildren will have no name for yet?